If you were ever looking for a prime example to illustrate the fact that life isn't fair, simply take Zenyatta. While there are characters in this game that can farm eliminations off cooldown without doing as much as engaging in core body functions, Zenyatta is out there having to fear for his life in every waking second. But that doesn't mean that you're completely helpless. If there's one thing I learned from the rank 1 support god Echo Flex, it's the fact that shot calling can be your ticket to victory more often than not. I mean, the man doesn't even main Zenyatta, and yet he's stacking up victories just by telling his teammates how to play the video game. The sad part about that is that this is what it takes to make Zenyatta work. Listen, sometimes I just want to toss a diva bomb out there and get a play of the game, rather than having to worry about every step I take being the last one. I mean, some of these DLC heroes just get to sit on high ground all day without a care in the world because they can shrug off diving attempts all on their own. But Zenyatta, even when you got flawless positioning, you're literally just not meant to survive every single engagement. The best thing you can do when getting bullied by the enemy team is blowing your ultimate, which honestly is already kind of a victory for them as far as ult economy is concerned. I won't lie if I said that it doesn't make me bitter to see heroes like Hammond being able to roll around undisturbed unless somebody really goes out of their way to counter them, whereas Zenyatta gets destroyed by the enemy team looking at him the wrong way. But there is a saving grace. Zenyatta is currently a meta hero. Now, I will admit that I went into open queue more than once to one-trick Zen and force my teammates to play goats around me, but fact of the matter is that at the current balance of the game, Zenyatta is a really good pick. If you look at the support leaderboard for the last season of competitive play, you'll be finding a lot of players that ran Zenyatta, though only few of them actually one-tricked him. But a hero you won't be finding a lot of is the one that we decided to take a look at on our last episode. In our noble pursuit of checking out every hero that has recently been rebalanced, we took up the challenge of one-tricking the queen of off-meta picks, Symmetra. While a lot of characters in this game are being one-tricked to very extensive degrees, only few of them are as infamous as those that were previously known to be defense heroes. In an attempt of making the likes of Torbjorn and Symmetra more broadly viable, Jeff has bastardized their kits time and time again just to eventually give up on them. For a while now, Symmetra players were asking the developers to not abandon their main hero, but what they got out of it wasn't what they expected. An increase of plus 25 to her total HP wasn't exactly what a lot of people had in mind, but hey, a buff is a buff, and as such we will try to run it through its paces. While Zenyatta has not been buffed directly during the last patch, the balance of Overwatch is very fragile. Baptiste and Brigitte were fortunate enough to receive Kaplan's blessing, and by proxy, Zenyatta suddenly became a much better pick. But as we all know, meta does not always equate to fun. Only because Zen is being played more often doesn't mean it is actually more enjoyable to play him. So is this the right time for me to reignite my competitive career, or should I continue to stick to my beloved casual play? Well, the first step to finding out is seeing if I can one-trick Zenyatta in quick play before moving over to ranked. Though do leave a comment down below to let me know if you want to see some competitive gameplay. Anyway, it's time to find out how good Zenyatta really is by taking today's story to Numbani. Despite Zenyatta's increase in popularity, I had to steel my mind and remain ever vigilant. Numbani was a difficult target for me to attack considering the overabundance of high ground that hitscan heroes absolutely love to abuse. We found ourselves immediately under fire by, surprise surprise, a mercy-pocketed Soldier 76 on high ground who was determined to keep us away from the objective. My tanks were woefully unimpressed with the fact that said player had deleted our main healer and continued to push forward to claim the objective in sheer disregard of their squishy teammates. Of course, the red team, and Kraken in particular, had no trouble defeating our careless tank line until they had to face me. They probably expected the same level of competence as they've seen my tanks display, but little did they know that I'm not actually bad at the game, I just pretend to be for the sake of content. Nobody's going to believe that lie, Cliff. After having defeated both of their tanks, I was left with only a sliver of HP to also combat the opposing Mercy. You can tell that I had my tryhard pants on because I immediately opened up with a headshot while trying to matrix dodge her bullet. But unfortunately for me, Mercy's firing guided missiles the approximate size of Hammond's mech, meaning there was no surviving. That first teamfight was all the defenders had to see to realize that we were completely dysfunctional as a group. They would offer us no respect as a response to our lack of threat, holding a very close defensive position that had no right to work. But all of that would change when the enemy McCree fell off the high ground to become an isolated target for my soldier. Temporal Rift had opened this teamfight up for us, and I'm fairly certain that the defenders did not expect that level of aggression from a team that just moments earlier didn't seem to have any idea of how to play this video game. While our DPS were taking control of the high ground, the rest of our team walked under the objective on main, and the blue team was trying to hold onto their lives for another chance to contest. They could struggle for sure, but nothing would stop the inevitable result of this team fight, which ended with us taking control of the objective. Considering our opening fight, I really didn't think that we'd be able to take the point in a sweep like this, but more importantly than that was keeping up the pace. Let's see what the defenders got up their sleeves now that we have proven to be worthy opponents. I'm surprised to say that our successful first point capture, while definitely relying on enemy misplays, was assuredly a case of DPS diff. While Ana and I were making ourselves comfortable on the card, the rest of our team was pushing up to reinforce our advantage, and I gotta say, watching two soldiers run towards the enemy spawn is a sight I wasn't expecting today. As much as I was impressed by our Echo's cleanup, I can't say the same for our Zarya, who decided to full send it into the enemy team with 150 HP and no line of sight to her supports. Making matters worse, our soldier was trying to set up a crazy flank that unfortunately got shut down immediately. Granted, losing 2 players while attempting to snowball your way into a second point cap is a surefire way of losing all of your momentum. But still, we weren't intending to back down just yet, ready to combat whatever the enemies decided to toss at us. Well, that's what I thought until the enemy diva took that very literally and tossed her mech at us to great effect. In what I can only assume to be another lapse of judgment, my Zarya figured she could make up for previous feeding by feeding even harder again, and well, I didn't want to be the one to tell her that this is not how that works. The defenders had successfully pushed us back into our spawn and naturally kept us there for quite some time. It's always frustrating to be on the receiving end of a spawn camp, but hey, maybe we can pull off another miracle like we did on the first point. I feel like by then it dawned on my Zarya that she has not been making the best decisions leading up to this moment. Determined to make up for her failure, she decided to lead the charge and take the court by storm with an ultimate. And since the defenders had a stronger sense of self-preservation than us, whoever survived the Graviton Surge tried to run away just to eventually be chased down. It seems like we have learned from our previous mistakes. Positioning ourselves more smartly this time around and having the card follow shortly behind us was definitely a big plus. You remember that sense of self-preservation I just mentioned? Yeah, maybe they were too worried about their own well-being because without even putting up a good effort to stop us, they just surrendered at the second point. Well, if they don't want to come out of the hidey hole to take the fight to the objective, then I guess we just have to take the fight to their spawn. I don't know what had bitten the defenders to suddenly play so passively, but Temporal abused the heck out of that by boldly visoring in their backline. My Zarya decided to join in on the fun, and if I didn't know any better, I would have claimed that this is a completely different team from the first team fight in this match. I know that Halloween is over already, but it definitely looks like the reenactment of several horror movie scenes is currently taking place in the enemy spawn. Speaking of horror movie, it dawned on me just then that the enemies actually had a second DPS besides their soldier, one which had been playing Mystery Heroes until they landed on Sombra. Thankfully, I could trust my Ana to not leave me alone against what is arguably one of my worst matchups, and following that confidence-inducing sleep dart, I decided to join my team in their spawn camping efforts. Now, you would assume that Zenyatta's right-click is one of the fastest ways to delete somebody off the map, but we often forget that Soldier's Helix rocket is on an unreasonably short cooldown and rivals the time it takes me to charge up my attack in the first place. So naturally, the old man just turned around to immediately pulverize me and any of my hopes of survival. Gosh, I hate it here. Now, honestly, I couldn't tell you what happened here while I was on the flank, but I guess we somehow all died, and, well, back to square one, I suppose. Needless to say that them having swapped to a Sombra made this entire game an order of magnitude more annoying for me, and that's without even mentioning the fact that all of our picks were completely meaningless because they just resurrected them every time. The defenders were back at giving us no respect whatsoever. We couldn't follow up on any of the plays we tried to set up, and instead had to disengage every time we lost one too many teammates to the spam. My Echo was determined to change that and make the executive decision that if our tanks don't want to go in, they'll just become a tank themselves. Granted, Ana and I had to take cover because all the divas began tossing about nuclear bombs like it was no big deal, but when the dust settled, the carbon copy ended up on top. We were all set up for victory at that point, and it didn't even cross our minds that there was still a way for us to lose this match, but sadly, we were in for a rude awakening. I really thought I was being smug when I positioned myself on the balcony, but what I didn't expect was for the Sombra to target me as opposed to trying to stop the card. Of course, my immediate response was trying to get her away from the objective so that even if I end up eliminated, at least I could buy my team some time. But what I didn't realize was the fact that she never intended to finish me off. Her translocator was positioned right next to the card, allowing him to jump in with a massive EMP. My entire team was now stuck in a Graviton Surge with no abilities at their disposal, while my miscalculation put me too far away from them. But there was still one chance. I used Transcendence to close the distance and save my teammates in the nick of time. Unfortunately, this is when my act of heroism ends. Pack Visor, Mercy Res, and for some reason my Echo spent the better half of a minute chasing after the enemy Zenyatta without ever hitting him, which honestly I consider an inhumane achievement. It was at this moment that it dawned on us, nay, that we were rudely reminded of the fact that we're playing on Nombani. Sustaining a Graviton Surge is great and all, but when you're playing 2 CP on wheels, it takes more than just surviving to win the game. The enemy Sombra continued to be extremely obnoxious on on high ground, which I hated here, okay? Why is that hero a thing? I guess I could say that for most of the DLC heroes they added to the game. Trust me when I say that I really tried to add to my team's lethality, but at the end of the day, and despite popular beliefs, Zenyatta is still a support hero. I couldn't frag out enough to make up for feeding DPS and cowardly tanks at the same time, and it definitely didn't help that the enemies continued to swap to more stalling heroes that incidentally also countered me more than their previous pick. With only 10 seconds left on the clock, we wouldn't even be able to get a proper team fight in. Chances are somebody would have to sacrifice themselves just to give us a shot at fighting. We barely managed to trigger overtime and even lost temporal before engaging the fight, but then something changed. I don't know if it's the fact that the defender's spawn advantage goes down the drain in OT, or if our echoes suddenly realize that they are playing a busted hero, but it actually looked like we had a chance. As much as the enemy Sombra denied our hopes of finishing this fight with a big ultimate, there's more than one way of getting our hands on a Graviton Surge, and our Echo was about to show us how. Temporal came back just in time not only to allow Echo to build a graph, but to actually go into Terra and clean up the remaining defenders while they were lacking support. It may have seemed like our team was having a hard time breaking through the last point, but in actuality, we were merely playing for overtime to break that 2 CP advantage while pretending that we're completely incompetent by feeding our brains out in previous fights. And where was I while all of that happened? Well, I was off on the flank to demonstrate the fact that it is impossible to miss a shot on Zenyatta's hitbox when playing in this corridor in Numbani. Honestly, jokes aside, this is just the kind of hero that Zenyatta is. If you're trying to go for silly plays, then you best be prepared to bring your A game, because the man has absolutely no means of rectifying misplays when you screw up. And I guess that's fine. Yeah, of course I wish that his hitbox wasn't so overblown, but I don't think I would enjoy playing Zenyatta if they actually made him easier to play. It is the adversity I am facing that makes it satisfying at the end of the day. And the only reason it is so funny to me when I actually succeed on my flanks is because he has no right being successful in doing so. So am I gonna go back to competitive play after having tried to one-trick Zen in quick play? I don't know. It takes an insanely good player to make him work on every single map, which is why you see barely anyone actually maining him in comp. And I don't know that it is fair to my team to put them at a constant disadvantage just because I want to play him. But hey, let me know your opinion down in the comment section below. And while you're at it, don't forget to drop me a like on your way out if you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you want to see more, and definitely hit that bell icon to not miss out on my next upload. I hope you guys have a fantastic day, and until next time, peace.